So I've been talking about how fear stands in the way of love or loving other people. And so today I wanted to name a fear of my own that is standing in the way of loving people that I love in my life. I live in Eastern Tennessee, and Eastern Tennessee is smack dab in the Bible Belt, which I don't say with any sort of negative connotation because I'm also a Christian. But one thing that I have been fearing lately is really claiming my friends, because I have friends who are in the gay community, and naming that for people who may potentially be voting for me is something that I've been afraid of. If I name that, will people vote for me? And I think that it's time that I step through that fear and step into the love that I feel for my friends. When I was in the military, I remember one of my commanders, when I was a squadron commander, he was the group commander, and he had asked about one of my troops, and she was a lesbian, and he asked if she was still dating that woman, and my chief and I at the same time said, "Oh no, they got married." And mortified look on his face, and we finished the conversation. I go back to my office. I get called back to his office, and he tells me that I'm not allowed to refer to that woman as her wife. I'm not allowed to refer to their ceremony as a wedding. I'm not allowed to refer to them as being married. And when I told him they're legally married, I will support her, he told me the federal government doesn't recognize it, therefore we won't recognize it. And the only reason the federal government doesn't recognize it is because they've left it up to the individual states. And then we got into a conversation about how when I was at the Air Force Academy, I had a class in biopsychology, and one of the things they had talked about was homosexuality. And they talked about how all of these influences come in and affect a sexual and gender orientation. And they were talking about genetic differences, they were talking about hormonal and chemical differences and when the baby is in the womb. They talked about environmental factors. They talked about even twin studies showing that twins will show the same sexual orientation. And when I told him this, he said, marriage is for procreation. If they can't procreate, they shouldn't be in a relationship. Which I found interesting, because I understand the biology behind it, just certain parts fit together. But as a single person, even as a heterosexual who was choosing not to have children, I found that interesting, because I planned on being in a relationship and I didn't want children. And there are way more things that a relationship is for other than procreating. And when I look at my sexual friends, they are the most loving people in my life. They would do anything for you. They're always there with hugs and acceptance. Of course, this isn't everyone, but of course, it's not everyone in a heterosexual community either. And so when we talk about American values and family values, the greatest value is being able to demonstrate love. And so what I hope that you can take from this is that whether it's homosexuals or heterosexuals or whatever gender or sexual orientation you want to discuss, the real value of a person is how they love. And so I hope that you can really take that in and really value each person as an individual and for their ability to love, and come back to your own values. Because if there's one thing I know that the Bible says, it's let you without sin cast the first stone. So if you think that this is a sin, it is not your place to judge. It is only your place to love and accept. It is your place to maybe introduce them to God, or by just being a loving being, not a judging person who hates, but a person of love. And so I want to name my initial fear, and I also want to celebrate moving through that fear and to really commit to the relationships and the friendships that I have built. And I hope that we can continue to choose love together.